for scoring an informal reading inventory, we have 4 errors that are considered scorable errors. They're going to count against the student. And we've talked about our percentages. You know, we're looking for that independent, instructional, or frustration level. So we need to know what errors or miscues to mark against the student. So the first one is the substitution error. Substitution. And basically, that just means that the student reads something different than what the word actually is. So an example of that would be, the boy walked down the road. Okay, so they just read something different. And all you do is write what they say. I mentioned this earlier, but some of your students will read too quickly for you to make check marks over the words they read correctly. So don't worry about that. Just make sure you get down anytime they say something that is different than what is on the paper. Now it may be that, tell me about this, Ms. Key. What 2 cueing systems is the student using? That's right, semantics and syntax, but not graphophonic. What if the student says this? The boy walked down the street.
Graphophonic, but on the other 2.
Graphophonic only. Doesn't make sense, really doesn't sound right, but it looks very similar. So it's still a substitution error, but it would be, as a teacher, you would treat that error differently. You would say, wow, okay, you read the boy walked down the street. It does kind of look like that, but does that make sense? Let's try that again and see if what we read makes sense and looks right. So this is a substitution error. The next type of error is called an addition. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's when they add a word in or add something into the text. And you would use just a caret to help you know that. So if the student said, the boy walked on down the street, we would just put a caret there and you would put the word that they said. Okay, the next type is called an omission. Okay, this is when they leave out a word. Simply leave out a word. So maybe they're reading along and they say, the boy walked down street. Totally leave out this little function word. All you do is put a dash to show that they left it out. And then the final scorable error is called a teacher told. Teacher told. So let's say, and this just means that you have to tell them the word. Let's say they get here and they say, the boy walked down the, and then they look at you and they give you these big puppy dog eyes. And what do they want you to do? They want you to tell them the word. You could. And if you tell them the word, then all you're going to do is put a T right there for a told. And that means that's an error, an automatic error. But if they give you those big puppy dog eyes, the first thing I'm going to do is put an A right there, which stands for appeal. That means they appeal to you. They question you, either with their voice or with their eyes or with their mouths. Tell me this word, please. Okay, they appeal to you. Now, what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is say, you try it. You try it. If they try it and get the word, then you're good to go. Everything's fine, no error. If they try it and say something that is not the word, like strict, what kind of error does it become?
Substitution.
Substitution. If they try nothing and you have to tell them the word, then you would write the T, and it becomes a told, a teacher told, which is an error. Okay? So those are the only ones that non-scorable errors that will count against them. Okay, now very quickly, let's look at some things that might happen that are going to be what we call non-scorable errors. Non-scorable errors. Okay, the first one is a self-correction. Alright, so basically the student is reading along and they make a mistake, maybe a substitution error, but then they fix it. So, for instance, the boy walked down the street. Okay? So they fixed it. So I would put road, and then I would put an SC. So that reminds me, or that tells me when I go back and look at it, that yes, they did have a substitution error, but they self-corrected. And by the way, you would never say that a student self-corrected himself. Okay, that is repetitive. You would just say the student self-corrected. Okay, self-corrected is all inclusive. You don't have to keep speaking out of that. You just stop. Okay, the boy walked down the street, self-correct. No error. We want to mark it because it's important. We want to go back and say, hey, I noticed that you fixed something when you were reading. That's what good readers do. Sometimes we make mistakes and then we fix them. You did a good job with that. And the next one is we do not count repeats. So when the student repeats something, many times they're just trying to make sense of it all. So what if our student said, the boy walked down the street. The boy walked down the street. See how they're just kind of trying to put it all together? All you would do is put an R, okay? You can put an R and you can put an arrow back to where they repeated, or you can just put an R. So, repeats. Now, if the student repeats something a bunch of times, that's weird. But it's still not going to count against it. So, if the child repeats the word walked 5 times, now that is weird, that is strange. But all we would do is put R, they repeated it 5 times. It's not going to count repeating against them. Okay, next is proper names. Okay, think about a lot of the proper names that you know. A lot of people that you know or places that you know. They are not spelled phonetically regularly at all. And so they're very difficult. So we don't, especially in an assessment situation, we don't want to count off for those proper names. So just help them with the word, tell them whatever you need to do to get past it, but it does not count against them. And finally, a repeated exact miscue. For example, let's say that we have the word mother in our story. And so the student comes along, and when they get here, they say mama. Okay? Next time, what kind of error is this? It's a substitution error. Let's say the next time they get to the word mother, they say mama. What kind of error is it? It's a substitution. But because it is a repeated exact miscue, we don't have to count it the second time. Okay, so if they say mama for the next 12 times that mother comes up, we only count it the first time. And we still mark it so that we know that this happened, but it only counts against them that one time. But now what happens if we get to the next one, mother, and they say, Mimi. It's a new substitution and it does count against them. Okay? So we want to give them the very best possible score that we can. So that's why we don't count those repeated exact errors. But when it changes, we do have to count that one against them. Other things that you will notice your kids doing will be errors in punctuation. They will blow through periods, or they will pause at weird times, or they will not raise their voice at the end of a question mark. All these kinds of things are things that you'll want to note, find some way to mark it, but it's not going to count against them. Okay, long pauses, weird stuff will happen, but it doesn't